Good evening. This is the March 25th meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:06. Public comment. Hearing none. Review approved summary of March 11th, 2019 meeting. Minutes. I always forget the minutes. Word.
Everybody receive those?
Yes.
Have a chance to read?
Yes.
Yeah. Wish to comment?
Good.
Yeah, I don't have.
I think there was anything I saw there. That's fine. I was away last week, so I was trying to get them out the door before I got away. I don't remember what they said.
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. All right, continue review of Master Plan Chapter 6, Public Services and Facilities. So I wanted to throw this out here because and maybe it's a little late in the process, but we've been reviewing the chapters from the beginning of the chapter to the end of the chapter. And I didn't know if it would be a little more advantageous for us to look at some of the goals. So we've read the chapters, and maybe we should switch gears and when we initially review them to start with the strategies and goals, because those are going to lead us to discussion about what was, in the document, what we read. And I'm not trying to shorten the process, but just maybe streamline it a little bit and concentrate on some of the strategies we have here in front of us to deal with, because we're not necessarily going to create new strategies. I mean, we could dissect what's here and we could find double the number of strategies, right? I'm sure if we looked at it close enough. So I'm just wondering everyone's thoughts about maybe concentrating on the strategies, going through those, discussing them, and then if it leads us into more topic, more conversation, we follow that route, and as opposed to the reviewing the chapter paragraph by paragraph or page by page.
Let's try it.
Want to try it?
And while we're doing it, just a thought, and I think it was at another meeting we did a little more than we've done at every other meeting, and that is to develop action plans and,
Yep.
have people, volunteer to be accountable for something, whether it's researching or whatever.
Yep. Okay. Good with that. So we will start on chapter 6. There are some, so I have noted on a couple of these already, like what we've done or what's in progress. So I can run through these. So goal 6.1, continue to protect Southampton's public water supply, Barnes Aquifer for generation to come, ensure that all infrastructure is up to date and in good repair. So that is something I put the question, how are we doing on this? We know we're doing some things, but are we doing everything? This strategy, I think, is a difficult one for us to figure out today. In this room, I think it requires a lot more energy and effort outside of this room to really get a picture of where everything is on this. I think it's a really overarching strategy. I think it's a good one, but it would require a lot of effort. And they had it as a target date ongoing, so it leads you to believe that the responsible parties are ongoing and continuously working on this.
Well, but let's see, Water Commission, I'm curious that the Water Commission didn't even know about the overlay district.
Right, and then the BayPAC doesn't exist, right? So, I mean, I think...
Yeah.
Well, is BayPAC coming back into existence?
The impression that I had is they were trying to get it started again. That was the reason for the summer meeting, but that was now last July.
Yeah.
And here we are in March to make an inquiry about that. The lead on it was East Hampton. And we were represented, Kurt Beaujolais was our representative to that
I
meeting.
think Marla Hank also was a member of the...
Oh, she may have been a member, but the meeting, I only went to one
Oh,
meeting,
I
she
see.
wasn't there. But yes, you're right, she is a member of that as well. We heard a presentation, you folks were there, almost everybody was there.
Should I have been there?
Well, it was interesting, I think, as background for this committee, from,
You talked about
Dr.
the one
Newman.
of the 12?
pardon?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Malcolm Smith.
I suppose I wasn't there, but I watched it.
Yeah.
I found the link to YouTube, and I'd recommend that, because you could, like, what? And stop and pause and rewind. It was fascinating.
Yeah, very,
Yeah, he's a very good speaker. Yeah.
One of the things that, you asked a very good question about the voluntary water restriction, and what did that do? And they said, well, instead of the peaks and the valleys, we had kind of a steady demand for supply of town water. My question that I should have asked was the follow-up question, because I've been thinking about it ever since. What does that mean for demand? It leveled it out, so there weren't peaks and valleys, but, is that causing the demand or the utilization of water to go down? If we have some type of restriction, I mean, the pattern is one thing, but what ultimately it
Yeah.
achieves is something else.
What's the
And,
impact on it?
why we don't do mandatory, I don't understand.
Well, I don't understand it, especially when East Hampton does, and that happened this summer. East Hampton was mandatory, Southampton was voluntary,
Right.
and we're using East Hampton water. It made no logical sense to me.
So looking at all of this, I mean, I was thinking about the water supply and how we get it and how we may end up having to be more conservative and also start to develop our own infrastructure.
Well, I think his point, I think that Professor Newton made a strong point that even though we think we have abundant water, we don't. It's going to become a concern, and I still find there are two viewpoints where, Kurt, whom I respect, was saying they've got plenty of water. But I think Professor Newton's outlook was much farther,
Right.
much broader, a much broader understanding of water supplies in general.
Is the statement having enough water, is that a 50-year plan, right? Or a 100-year plan?
Well, also very much to the point
Or
of
20,
that,
right?
our lease is 20 years for East Hampton's water. That is very short term.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, think about the development and their usage as well, right? So they rebuilt the Eastworks Mills, they're gonna redevelop the mills on the other side of Ferry Street. That's a large user of water.
Yes, yes, and it's a fine lease for as long as they don't need it, and 20 years is just so short.
For sure.
On top of the fact that it's not necessarily just do we have the water, but do we have the infrastructure? Do we have failing pipes?
Right.
Do we have, I happen to have a personal issue in my house that got revealed apparently because of development across the street from my house where water pipes, apparently, this is according to the what's his name, who's the water superintendent? Gone. He is concerned that the development across the street from us brought the water pipes essentially to the surface more. Of course, the water pipes didn't move, but the surface got removed. So consequently, two times in the last few years, during the winter, our pipes froze in the road, okay? Not in the house, in the road. And this year, he was really on it in the sense of be sure you've got somebody flushing your toilets at least every other day if we were not there. So that's an infrastructure issue, which is a part of the water delivery system for us. So I think there's two parts.
Unintended consequences.
Yes.
We also got to think about just the pipes that we have in town. I mean, how much water we're taking in is actually getting to the tap.
Yeah.
Oh,
And there are some
leaks.
issues
Yeah.
that
Yes.
the Water Commission is working on there.
But I sort of agree with the whole notion especially as I went through the next section on, which we'll get to on energy, but, of us having a more longer vision plan. This now looks to me like it was all, even though it was ongoing or 20 years, we need to have a real vision.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this, is going to require a huge investment, but we need to look at where we're going because we're running out of resources.
Yeah. And that point is made in the energy chapter.
Yeah, very much.
Okay, good. So the next goal, we had continue to educate landowners with contaminated wells and determine solutions to tie into the public water system.
To demand more water.
To demand more water. So I had this one marked as complete. I think it came through on the status as complete. That sheet, the reconciliation sheet we had, I don't know if I'm,
Yeah, I haven't really looked at that
I was-
spreadsheet close enough to
I gotta
understand that.
find that
This
sheet.
wasn't
It's
about
right
the
here.
dams?
No, this one was about the,
Oh, 6-1B,
When I
okay.
printed it,
Yeah, I tried to print it and it was all, yeah, I did too, and I thought, I'm not gonna waste my paper to print it out.
Yeah, it is listed in the sheet that Francine created
Yeah.
quite a long time ago in the
Summary,
yes.
beginning.
it was listed as
That
complete.
was
completed.
determined to be complete.
So I would, I guess, tend to agree with that, right? Because we do talk about water pollution, you buy a home, you test your water, like it's kind of built into the system, and determine solutions to tie into the public water system. It's very difficult, depending on where your house is, right? You just don't have an opportunity with a bad well if you're in an area with no public water. But, okay. I just wanted to make sure that was complete, because I had it, and it was the only one for a while, so.
But I'm looking at this now and saying, this is almost saying the solution for people with it is, would be to tie into public water.
Right.
But our issue may be we're running out of public water as well.
Right.
So I think in terms of education, it's
Yeah.
got to go.
Well, it seems that, the word continue, to me, this is something that should be an ongoing activity, and who knows when this might have been done. But
Right.
you've got new people moving in and out all over, I would assume, over time, and why not make this a more
So ongoing.
obvious, ongoing activity?
But is it
rather than-
not true that most people who have public water service are on public water?
A friend of mine has both in his house.
I had both at my house.
You do.
We took out the pump for the well, so it's no longer being used, but when we moved in, we had both.
You can kind of pick and choose. You can irrigate with the well.
That would be the ideal, but, if you have a broken pump,
Right.
that could
The
be
cost
easily
is-
fixed, seriously, that could be easily fixed, which we didn't, and we just took it out. Stupid, because now, of course, we don't have a watering system, but the problem becomes when people use the public water just to water their lawns daily, even when it's raining, those kinds of things. I think it's an education issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there somewhere where we would see a report from the Water Commission or something that said, okay, there were X many wells here, here, and here contaminated, and this is what we have done, that these now are tied in?
I don't know if
Or is there
the
any-
contaminated well is probably more of a health department
Yeah.
Okay.
tracked
That's what I'm wondering,
item.
because it's got Water Commission, so I wasn't sure if that was the
Yeah,
right.
so I think the first half is the health department, or even, it's kind of on the homeowner as well. You go to
Right.
you bring your water to your local testing facility, because that's probably what the health department would tell you if you brought it there.
I've never done that.
When we bought our house, we tested the water. It's good.
Would you trust it? They're in clear water.
You're still here, so.
Well, yeah, I don't think my parents ever did, I'm not sure.
And what contaminates, it's agricultural runoff,
Right.
chemicals from, the street or something, but,
Yeah.
Natural minerals and things out there, right?
Yeah, well, that's true. It's been suggested to me that we might have lead because of the lead mines.
oh, there you go. It's worth
That's why
checking.
I'm so dull.
All right. With that one, I did put ongoing activity, and I'll put follow-up with health department. I think
So this is 61B, the 6-1B.
6
Yeah.
Okay.
These, what they call strategies, to me, are activities. I mean, they're not.
I know, I struggle with that word too, I
Yeah,
don't like
this is-
it.
Yeah.
These are all
right.
activities to achieve the goal, but it's not
Yeah.
strategies per se. But I guess to me, I would also want to know who or how frequently would some of these wells be tested to know that we don't have an ongoing contamination problem. I mean, is it every couple of years that the wells get tested?
Is
or
it, are we referring to landowners or public supply wells?
Well, public, I
Well,
think they
They
routinely
test,
They
Public
test.
the public,
do.
Yeah,
public
but
they
this is-
test every.
This is
Every year?
landowners
Yeah.
with contaminated
Yeah,
It's the
wells.
private ones.
So it's the private ones?
Yeah,
Okay.
which is kind of
Might not.
up to your own.
Onus is on them.
Yeah, I guess. Well, okay.
And maybe health department should be on, well, it is, you just said that health department should be on there to give some guidelines to the landowner that wonders
Yeah,
if
but-
she should be checking her well, yeah.
Well, that may be, but what can I do? We don't have public water. We don't have water.
No, but you're a
around the-
landowner in town and you're
Yeah.
covered under the health department. They could say, advise people to get their wells checked.
Filtration
Some sort of filter
systems.
system
Oh,
for,
right,
If there's
okay.
lead, there's ways to remove the
Well,
lead.
sure, but,
yeah, okay.
yeah, determined solutions to tie into the public water system
Yeah.
is not an option.
That's not an
Right.
option.
So as a strategy, that is meaningless to a great many.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Next, 61C, build a piping system to loop Pequot Pond to Valley Road and connect to an existing water main in Westfield. So this is part of the Water Department Master Plan. It is in there. They put out a 5-year plan 2 years ago, a year ago?
I think 2016.
2 years ago, 3 years ago. So this was part of the plan. Now, when I say part of the plan, it may not have been in the immediate 5-year plan, but it is something they talk about as a goal in their plan. So it is an ongoing item, or pending action ongoing, right? I mean, it's something known whether or not they've made steps towards that, but I can follow up with that.
All of these should be followed up with the water department, don't you think, Mike? Yeah.
I will do that. I'm making notes on the, kind of some of the specifics, the health department in particular, so.
The water commissioner position is up for reelection or election. It's a
One of them,
vacancy.
or
The-
Kurt?
There's one.
Kurt's not going to stay?
It's just,
But, and that should be looked into, because I think Westfield had some issues with water a few years ago. Remember well contamination in Westfield? Public
I think they
wells?
still do.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
It's much debate about the source of that.
Well, and also given their own level of development, whenever this thought came about, is that still a reality today that we could maybe even tie into Westfield? You know, things change.
well, they
Yes,
talk,
yes.
I know they still talk about it, but, and then the other thing that, I don't even know if it was even mentioned here, but the alternative is to, build the water treatment plant so that we could access the water that's owned by Holyoke, but
That's
it
right.
resides in Southampton, and what we would need for that.
And even if that would be like a 5-year plan, in other words, we can't go to the town and say we need 4.5 million to build a new water plant now, bad time. But if it's the right thing to think about for the future, might there be grants, might there be bonds, might there be approaches to getting that, because it's necessary.
It's all the more reason to look at this as a real long-term plan.
Very long term,
Right.
yeah.
And I think I do want to, I'm making notes on these to bring up to the water department to kind of see, are they capturing this in their plan, right, in their approach? Which ones are they capturing, which ones are they not capturing? Do they see the value in some of these, or are some of these things that just aren't achievable, right? We talk about the Westfield tie-in. It may not even be achievable at this point, right? There could have been conversations had, and if it's a no, then it's a strategy that comes off the board. It's just not possible. So. 61D, build a new water tank that would strengthen water capacity for the ponds area to accommodate new growth in the area. This is another water department master plan item. It is on there.
Where would that water come from? What water would fill that tank? Do you?
The water from Westfield.
Oh, it's all part of 61C.
I don't know. I mean,
It's all part of 61C
Or Holyoke.
to do the loop.
I mean, I live on the ponds, and I don't think there's been any like new growth.
Oh,
That's
but-
what I would.
No, the planning board heard a presentation for a development, actually back-to-back developments in the Pequot Road area.
For quite a few.
But like on
Yes.
the ponds area specifically.
Well,
or-
I would have to look at a map, but I consider the Pequot Road area to be part of the ponds area. Is that what you would call it? Or not? I mean, not
I live,
on the
like-
pond,
Yeah, I live on
but,
the pond, so it's
Yeah.
different for me. But yeah, I guess then there's new growth.
yeah, there is already new development, but then more plans have come before the planning department. I don't have dates. I know
That's
they've come.
That's fine. Never mind. New growth.
At one point, the water tower on Homer Meadow on Wolcott was leaking away. Has it ever been?
That is the water tower
I know.
for our
Is that-
town well.
You knew it was leaking?
Yeah, I've been told that by a couple of different people. That was a while ago, but I
That's a question. to
don't know if
ask.
it was ever.
How much water gets to the tap?
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to George's point. It's, from the beginning, how much is really being conserved into where it's got to go versus leaking out somewhere. So that's a good question. I think that had been an issue at one point in time.
That is a big
Or
question.
maybe the
for
question is,
commission.
maybe to phrase it differently, the question is, how what's the word? Not how stable, but how
Efficient, maybe?
efficient, how something is secure. Yeah, something is the water. Yeah, is the water tower on Wolcott right now? How well is that functioning? Or
Right.
how?
Think about how many
but-
gallons of water you waste on like a running toilet.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That's right. That's right.
Way more water than you think. I mean, think about if that's going
That's-
town-wide, major pipes.
Yeah.
It's not just toilets, it's the leak outside it, the faucet.
Yeah,
to-
Sure. Yeah. So I think the question would be, what's the level of efficiency? Maybe that's it, of the water tower, the current water tower. I think
And the lines leading from
coming
it.
to and from.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that'd be worth just checking.
Those of us who are old enough to remember 20, 25 years ago, when they were talking about diverting the Connecticut River over the Quabbin because Boston was so thirsty. Eventually pushed back, and they were able to get Boston to tighten up their systems because water was just leaking.
Gigantic amounts of
So-
lost.
But we're a small town, we're not Boston, but nonetheless, leaks, I think, should be the first place they start. When we talk about conserving water,
Yeah.
there needs to be an impetus, and people worry about money, but when there's a will, there's a way. And you talk about, building new pipelines and taking water from Westfield, and that's going to be expensive too, or a treatment plan for the reservoir that's, or the dichotomy or whatever, we could probably do better by just looking at tightening up our existing systems. You'd
And
be
the
surprised
new
at how much
Labrie-
water we save.
The
Yeah,
new
I
Labrie
agree with that.
Field,
Yeah.
if I recall correctly, at the town meeting when the large amount of monies were appropriated, it included a irrigation system. Is that from our drinking water, or could that be gray water? Could
Right,
it
some
be-
potable water or something, yeah.
Or not?
Well, we need to figure that out. Well, that was the interesting thing. I mean, now that you mentioned Boston, because the speaker really looked at what went on in the eastern part of the state and said this is where they were and this was the catastrophe that they experienced and we're looking just like them. And that was the thing that caught my attention of why we need to be doing more about conservation and finding alternatives.
Water is the next big commodity.
Yeah.
It's going to be like oil.
Already is, yeah.
And not
it's
only
going-
here, but internationally. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So can't say it enough about having a long-term plan and really think about conservation. And to me, that means more than just telling people not to use water.
Right.
It means infrastructure improvements.
But I think, is that not part of the Water Commission's master plan to repair many?
Yeah, so there's miles of pipeline to be replaced. Exactly what the schedule and, geographic locations are, I'm not sure. But yeah, that is something, right? They go by the age of the infrastructure and you repair the oldest first.
Is there a master plan online?
It is.
But it's not just the infrastructure, it's exactly what these folks are talking about, the conservation aspect to it as well. Toilets that are low-volume toilets and We were in Florida last week, and there's signs all over the place. Watering is occurring with non-potable water. So don't, if it gets into your face, don't lick your lips because you don't know it's
gray
it's
water.
not clean. It's gray water, yeah.
Yeah, we could learn a lot. My wife's from Southern California. They know how to use water
Yes.
efficiently because they have to. They're catching water off of roofs,
Yep.
using it for these kind of purposes to flush your toilet.
Yeah.
You know, when you can make it part of the, it adds an expense, but part of the permitting process, if you make a building or whatnot, that you're collecting water, non-potable water for flushing and things like that you don't need to drink.
Yep.
I mean, there are lots of other ways too.
That's brought up in the energy chapter too. I just lost my thought connection, I'm sorry. When we get there, I'll refer back to it, I'm sorry.
Strategy 6-1E, build a new water line to connect an existing water line on East Street. This was another one I had flagged, Water Department Master Plan. This was a long-term, 11 to 15 years, so surprisingly, we're sort of on time with this one because we haven't started yet.
Yes,
It's probably one of the few that we've...
6 more years.
The longer term ones, we're doing pretty good at.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this
We're
going to
falling
tie,
far behind.
is this going to tie into the bridge repair on East Street, or?
No. I mean, I would say no, just because they'll probably replace the water line crossing at the bridge when they do the bridge work. Ideally, you would do the water line work when you repair East Street years after. If they're fully reclaiming the road, you'd want to get in there and do that work.
Is that water line connected to the bridge? Is that under belly of the bridge?
It's probably hanging off of brackets or something underneath, if I had to guess. All right, goal 6.2, work with owners of existing dams in Southampton to maintain structure and ensure public safety. So strategy 6.2A, make an inquiry with City of Holyoke Water Department to get a copy of the emergency action plan. I have to follow up on this one. I don't know, but it's probably a simple request. Water Commission, Police Department, Fire Department.
There was reference to how, in the chapter, on how often it's inspected. Is it not, was it not there?
I did see that, yes.
Yeah, there was something. Yeah.
And wasn't it also referenced that it wasn't clear that it was being done on a regular basis?
That would be
Something
page
about-
114.
Something about following up with Holyoke to make sure it was being inspected.
So the next
Well, it's-
two strategies are very similar in terms of the
Yeah, for-
following up and keeping
2006.
track.
For high hazard dams, inspections must occur every 2 years. Significant hazard dams every 5 years. That's on page 114. Low hazard every 10 years.
Actually, in the chapter, it says it's not clear whether the owner had developed an emergency action plan.
Right. So I think the goal is to figure out what we've done for strategy 6-2A, and are we following up with 2B and 2C in terms of communication with Holyoke regarding the plan, regarding the requirements of the plan. So I have these as information requests.
Now, what was curious to me in the chapter was the reference to the white. I think that's a hazard, a high hazard rating. But that's not holding water any longer, it's open. Yeah, it says impoundment has been drained since 1982.
Does it hold water when it rains real heavy?
Yeah, when you get a big runoff, it backs up in there.
But it's not, is it restrained in some way? I don't, well, let's see, acts as retention basin until improved city has agreement with Office of Dam Safety to continue operating as such.
So if you get water behind the dam, even if it's temporary because of spring runoff or something, it's still holding water and therefore at that moment.
That's true. I walk there very frequently. I've never seen a backup or any coming over the spillway. It's always dry in my,
Observations.
yeah.
I won't see it coming over the spillway, but there will be water backup.
Well, but I walk back behind there too, down to that creek, and it's never, well, anyway, so, I mean, it is what they say it is, but I've never personally witnessed it.
You have, sir? Yeah. But not to the spillway.
It's never come up to the spillway, no.
Would you think that it would be in danger, even that road?
I don't know that the road will be in danger, and I don't know how much the backup is, but I do know that sometimes it's higher than the drain, you know, it does back up.
Okay.
And you need a real, you know, if you got a lot of snow cover and a lot of rain,
I'll pay closer attention.
Yeah.
Now would be a good time to do it too.
Yeah, so there was 6-2C, you know, town of Southampton to be kept abreast of developments at the reservoirs and dams, which, I mean, makes sense, right? You want to know what's going to affect your water supply. I have that as another request info. 6-2D, approach the owners of the Searle Pond Dam, Alder Pond Dam to ascertain the status and condition of the structure. If information is not forthcoming, make an inquiry about this dam to the Office of Dam Safety.
Is the Searle Pond Dam the same as White
Cyril's, yeah.
Carmody?
No, that's the
Oh, that's different.
Wolf Hill Sanctuary.
Oh,
It's just a little one, it's just for their pond.
okay. I went down there and didn't know that I wasn't looking at Ty Carmody. I was looking at a different pond.
Oh, Ty Carmody is a big reservoir.
Okay. All right.
So that's another one I have request information. I don't know to what level at which we pursue this, or at what level at which the select board, police department, fire department pursue it. But, you know, it's something we can put in front of them as an actionable item.
It's just one of those things, I don't know this pond. Is it so small, its consequences are negligible?
That's what I'm wondering, and that's why I'd like
Farm
to,
Or
pond.
should we change
Yeah.
that rabbit, or?
it's,
When if you look at, in the chapter, it talked about, on the table, it said the last inspection of it was in 1977, so it hasn't been a high priority,
Well, is that
obviously.
because it's
Probably better
private
use of
property
someone's
now?
time.
Probably.
Self-repairs.
I mean, it's private property, so.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So is the Lyman Pond Dam at Sheldon's.
yeah, which is,
And the owner is seeking to demolish the dam and seeking funding to do it. But Mass Historic Commission has just sent a letter saying that there's historic significance there.
Is this still the owner, Glenn West?
Yes.
It's ironic. I'm sure
Well, they're,
Trouts Unlimited would love to have it removed, so there's
Correct.
unfettered access for all the salmon that's.
Put in a fish ladder.
well, it's running open now.
Right.
They've blasted a hole in it. But, you know, that's kind of a tough situation because I'm sure the repair of it, the maintenance of a dam such as that is very costly. And if a landowner doesn't have it, but has the
And who
responsibility.
ultimately then is responsible if the individual landowner can't?
I think
maintain it?
they are responsible for it. I don't know how that plays out.
Interesting.
But it's also quite costly to demolish the dam. So I believe he was hoping for funding. And the general trend is to breach those small dams to allow for better fish run. There are many mill ponds in New England.
But from our perspective here, are we looking at this as from a town-wide perspective and a safety perspective? And we have a little farm pond, you know, so
Is that really our
so it breaches and it lets go. Were we looking at deaths because of downstream from this little pond, or what is our role here to be looking at that?
You know, these, for instance, I have tagged as request information and sort of putting the follow-up in the court of the municipal departments that are responsible for this, as it relates to the plan. Are these, you know, the emergency action plan, emergency response dam collaboration. Are these, the four we just discussed, are they really things that, in the grand scheme of the master plan, is it something we're gonna focus on and make change to? No, but it's worth putting it back in front of the group saying, is this something you're working on? It was recommended, we'll keep it as
Or just
pending
like,
action.
emergency action plan, like this is just something that you guys should be aware of.
Right.
As like
Right.
your
It almost-
department.
They're the experts, right?
It almost
Right.
comes down to, there should be, what we tease out of here are things that end up being charges to the responsible committees. It's something
Right.
that they keep in front of them all of the time.
Right.
And make sure that they're doing it rather, and I don't know, maybe they are,
Right.
but unless we do, we're not gonna know.
I would think that, given that Concom is holding the CR on the Searle property, that they would be aware of whether the dam has been inspected. But that's an easy inquiry to make. You can just email Barry. Or you want me to do that?
Sure.
Okay.
And so back on the Lyman Pond, that's sort of on hold. Is the landowner trying to find resources?
It has been. I can get an update on that. The letter from Mass Historic was just received and read at our last meeting, so I will get clarification on the Lyman Pond at our next meeting.
Goal 6-3, make public wastewater sewer system available priority area. So we're gonna go through these quick because I feel like we've touched on these a lot. Continue discussions with City of East Hampton to extend public wastewater service along Route 10 College Highway to the town center and County North Road. This one came through as complete. We
Well-
had conversations. Did we have the conversations and we're done having the conversations?
No, it says, I mean, I would imagine that this would be an ongoing discussion
I would hope so.
as,
Well, have they come up the road, down the road, up, down the road from East Hampton?
No,
No. I
no,
mean,
they're at the
but-
car wash, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the car wash, is that tied into East Hampton's
East Hampton.
wastewater system?
At their expense.
At their expense? And what about Big Y and the church?
At their expense.
At
and what about the
tied.
new auto parts store?
At their expense.
I meant to say auto
Yeah.
parts store.
But to them, it's a tap, it's a T to the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in East Hampton.
Yeah, that would be-
Oh, right, the auto parts store is in East Hampton.
It
Yes.
is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coleman
That was the
Road.
last corner. Oh.
Coleman Road, oh, I do, from when I was a kid.
Really?
Yep, when you turn onto Coleman, that family was Southampton, and the Tiffany farm was in East Hampton.
That's true.
Oh, okay, well, that is not our headache, but I mean, it would be the same issue. They would tie in
I still
just
didn't
by
understand.
proximity,
The
Right.
back,
whether, yeah.
Dactylers.
And it happens to every
And they were in Southampton.
property going down the line, right? You have to
in the
tie
brick
in.
house that was demolished, there was the Red Rock, and then Slosser's house. They were there when I was a kid.
Was that Southampton?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
across the way was the Tiffany farm, and that's where
Which
the
is-
auto parts store is now.
So we have this one is ongoing. This will be another one that we send to probably Ed, Highway Department as this is part of the master plan. This is a strategy to follow up with.
I'm thinking the Tiffany farm was actually
The
across
farm is where the federal.
where the credit union and Verizon is. That was where the barns were anyway. On this side was Yamakowski's.
Sounds like we need to establish where the town line is and where the Tiffany farm
Yeah.
is before we can move.
I feel like Coleman is the town line, isn't it?
Yeah. So I thought O'Reilly was
The
in
auto
Southampton.
store is on the Red Rock side.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was in Southampton. I thought O'Reilly Auto Parts was in
I don't think
Southampton
it's
too.
considered in Southampton.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, then I thought it was on the south side of Coleman.
It is.
North side. north side is East Hampton.
Okay, yes,
So south side is,
yeah,
Correct, correct.
yeah.
okay.
Anyway.
So it's on the south
Moving
side.
on. So then it must go down to Pure Food as well, they must be on,
I was,
Yeah.
probably all those businesses that
Yeah.
are.
Of, the mall, you know,
okay,
But
I do stand corrected.
Big Y?
By the other places.
Yeah.
where the tractor store was in.
This is East Hampton.
East Hampton
Okay,
requires
so I because I almost never drive
Take that corner off.
Okay, could
Sorry,
be right.
sorry for that confusion.
So Paul Trueheart brought the sewer down from there to his own place, and that sewer, I guess, is available for anybody else who wants one. Maybe you have to pay him something for it for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I
He
think
put that
Paul's,
sewer line in, and we don't service it, I don't believe.
does Paul's house have
All right,
I don't think he went to the house, I think he was interested in the business.
business?
You need a gavel.
I need a gavel, yeah. Strategy 6-3B, determine solutions that are economically and politically feasible. Politically, I don't like that word
Boy,
there.
that's, of all these strategies, they put it in that one, they could fit all of these.
Politically feasible to provide wastewater services to thickly settled areas with a high rate of septic failures, such as ponds areas. I mean, we're on the other side of town that we just talked about, right? I don't know how close Westfield wastewater services would be there to bring them to the ponds area, but, I mean, once again, it's not a midterm, or I guess maybe finding a solution or developing a solution, maybe a midterm, but it's a long-term, expensive strategy, right, to put that infrastructure in.
But at this point, we are midterm.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
since this
Yeah.
document was completed, we're midterm.
Yeah.
So is there any follow-up on this one that we're going to do?
I mean, I'm gonna put it out there to the groups that are here, but I know nothing's been done, right? Because the town doesn't have the money to do this, and if you're not aware of them interested in putting in wastewater lines in these areas, and other committees and commissions aren't, then it's not going anywhere. It hasn't gone anywhere at this point. So it becomes a strategy that needs to be reprioritized.
There are a lot of people out there that will vote against it because they've got septic systems that are up to code.
Right.
And probably just put a septic system in there.
To the ponds,
They don't want it,
homes,
you know.
have septic systems.
You're gonna find,
Politically.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine
Yeah.
sewage goes past like that new Dunkin' Donuts or past 70s up top. From Westfield at least.
All right. So I put, is this a priority? And I know, grand scheme, yes, but is it really something that the town is going to concentrate on doing in those
Is
areas?
that where the next 5 years of money's going?
Right. The next 20,
Right, well, right.
30, you think about the capital outlay to build all this infrastructure. I don't think the town's in a position where they can even plan that far ahead with their capital outlay.
No, but to your point earlier about the water, we'll put it in the hands of the experts and
Right.
make sure,
They're at least aware.
because we don't know, right? Because it's pretty thickly settled over there, so even if it's expensive, you're gonna get a lot of bang for that buck.
Right. If they want to pay that sewer fee with their active septic.
It's not like you're bringing one line 10 miles
There's
for
some
2
that have some
houses.
full systems that would love to have it, but there are a lot of them that
Right.
have solid systems that
Right.
don't want to
Yeah.
pay for it to come by their house. And that's what happens.
Yeah.
They'll
My-
pay for the betterment without the, that fight's been going on for a lot of years here.
All right, next. Public services and facilities. Consider adopting zoning regulations that allow for greater development densities where infrastructure is available or is planned. This is Planning Board Housing Authority.
I think,
Are you on 6-4?
I think we need to consider,
Yes.
it doesn't mention it, but they should add the water commission here. I mean, we need to talk about the drain on whatever resources we have.
Right.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, with some of these zoning regulations, would that tie into something we talked about in an earlier chapter about the cluster development? kind of stuff, or mixed-use
I
development?
think that'll
No.
It sounds like some towns call it infill, where you're really focusing development where there's already development, but tighter versus continuing to build houses with 4 or 5 acres of lot.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's regardless of where you build the house, it's going to be a strain unless it's rural enough water infrastructure. So I agree with you. I think we should decide the water commission should.
I will tell you that the planning board has, for a long period of time, been working on revising bylaws, including, I believe, zoning bylaws. However, as you were explaining at another time, bylaw changes is a whole stepped process, and at this point, it's still in the planning board working with PVPC, and got kind of halted because of the whole marijuana thing. And I believe it's going to be revived again because we now have a new PVPC consultant. So, and I'm terribly sorry that I'm not exactly able to tell you what bylaws they've finished or what they work on. Hasn't gone before town meeting yet, though. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the individual committees and boards will have their very detailed, specific bylaws that'll be referenced by the town bylaws. We're only working on town bylaws.
Yes.
So yes, all of that detail and specificity, and everything needs to be updated. Because a lot of them are sitting on old bylaws just as we're sitting on old bylaws.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so strategy 6-4B, selectively invest in infrastructure improvements to direct new residential units to areas that have been identified for growth. This is another one of those strategies where it's just an extra, because selectively invest in infrastructure improvements to direct new residential units. So build new water and sewer lines in places where you want houses to be built. That's what this strategy is. So you really need to figure out if and how you can build the water and sewer lines until you even tackle this one, right?
I mean, if you
And
consider
then hope that people want to
residential,
build.
And then hope they want to build there.
I feel like instead of residential, this,
Yeah.
should be more focused on putting that infrastructure into potential commercial
Yes,
properties.
yeah. I-
Like, do we really need more residential properties in town?
Well, but I think the question still needs to be answered. It's been assumed in this text that commercial growth will benefit the town, and we addressed this a little bit last time. Has anyone ever done a study to know whether that's actually true, given that the upgrade in infrastructure, will those costs be offset by the
Tax rate is
revenues?
the same, so.
No.
Yeah.
Did you just say the tax
So,
rate's the same?
so
Yeah,
in
it
other
is.
words, the premise that commercial growth for Southampton will be advantageous
Is an
may,
assumption.
it may very well not be true, and according to what Mike just said, it's not true. If the tax base
Oh,
will
tax
not
rate
be
definitely has
increased
to change.
Yeah.
sufficiently to pay for the upgraded infrastructure, so.
Yeah, I mean, you only shift the percentage from, one group to the other, right? Your total tax levy doesn't change because somebody built an $8 million facility somewhere. It doesn't, there may be other forms of revenue, permitting and different things, but, are those enough to offset millions in infrastructure investment? No. Then it's tough because you're not planning the infrastructure investment because you're going to get development and a return on that, right? So a lot of this talks about building water and sewer in areas where you've already collected a lot of your revenue, right? You're still collecting taxes from those houses that are there with the failing systems, but they're not building new houses. Well, let's pretend they're not building new ones here and there, right? But you're not building new developments in those areas. Those developments are built and those houses are built. You're not collecting your permits and fees. You're not really going through that cycle of municipal permitting and money retrieval from builders. So, at this stage, I don't know how you recoup that cost. There's other there's other positives that come with new development, commercial development, but does it really pay for the investment, the infrastructure investment? I don't think it does, especially where we are today in the town, right? Maybe in,
Not how it's structured right now.
yeah, I mean, maybe in some
That's what doesn't change.
urban areas, some city areas, there's probably some more benefit, there's more permitting, there could be some more programs that are involved, but
Because Amazon wanted to.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
The problem with a lot of that stuff is the way you're going to attract is people that are going to want tax breaks.
Yeah,
Right.
No.
They're going to want tax breaks for 10 years, and they're
So
going
then
to
you shift it on me, for
Yeah.
the sewer line, I don't
Yeah.
need.
Have you seen that?
You know,
There you
it's-
go. Yes, you're right.
And we're going to look like West Springfield, Riverdale Road.
Yeah.
If that's what we want in the town, it might be a long-term return, 10 or 20, 30 years down the road, but not initially.
Yeah. No,
Sometimes you gotta play that game though, too.
For new developments coming in, I'm just ignorant to this. How come we accept them when we're already at the water capacity?
Because there's no policy, bylaw, any reason to not allow a development which meets the standards in terms of space that is required, the frontage, the guidelines that are established. We can't say, sorry, not enough water, unless we change something very dramatic, like,
And that's
said, we
probably
need,
not going to happen.
probably not.
I mean,
Well,
no, I
it
mean, I've
should,
seen the
yeah.
backlash of making proposals where all the special interest groups show up in town meeting and it gets defeated.
And unfortunately, some people will say X number of dollars are going to be coming into the town coffers from this house because of the value of the house and that whole thing, and then there's no weighing out necessarily of what the other costs will be, whether it's an expenditure for infrastructure like water or municipal services like fire and police and schools and ambulances, no matter what the age of the people residing in there. It's an issue that we and a lot of small towns face. And
But I mean, it's something to consider. I mean, if we talk about maybe putting together priorities and having priority areas of development that would have the least impact, and that would start
Well,
first.
that's a bit what the Open Space Review Committee is hopefully putting their arms around, to determine areas that would be good to be maintained for open space, but that's not the same as saying,
I know.
you're not going to build on this because it's going to demand water. That's a very different thing.
This kind of seems like the chicken or the egg.
Yeah, and so,
Should have been addressed probably 20 years ago.
well,
yeah.
okay, moving on.
This chapter to me was just overwhelming.
It is overwhelming. There's a lot. I think a lot of the ones coming up, I honestly think they're kind of quick reviews, just
I feel like energy is pretty like.
yeah, so I actually have a decent amount of requests into Ed regarding sort of the upcoming strategies in Chapter 6 and then Chapter 7, just looking for statuses on some of these. But, so 6, public services facilities, goal 6-5, e-government. Maximize the town's website and create a one-stop shop for permitting documents and forms from any department, which can be downloaded and filled out at no cost to the applicant. So this is, I want to say this is complete. I don't know if every form is on there, but we have a website. The town posts forms on there. It's complete.
The list is pretty extensive.
Right, and I think continued improvement is not necessarily under the auspice of the master plan committee. That's more of a administration department head, in terms of making what you have available better. Participate in regional online permitting project facilitated by the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. I don't know what this is. I don't know why, I'll be honest, I don't know why we'd participate in something like that.
Is there such a thing as regional permitting, or?
Well, I did tell you, I believe at the last meeting, that the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission has proposed that we're going to hear more about a better, more streamlined permitting process. I didn't and it might include online. I mean, that is certainly
Right.
the way the world is going, more and more. They can ask for experts in online services and stuff. But, I think my feeling is that we're moving in this direction. The question becomes, if we have this town website and whatever, is there a parallel process happening? Because some people really don't go on to the website. They don't use e-services. They're not there yet.
He raises his hand.
But it's fine, I mean, I
They
fill out
don't know how
permits
to
by
use
hand
a
and
cell
drop them
phone.
off.
I don't know. Some people don't know how to use a cell phone, I don't know.
I don't even like a cell phone.
So the question is it a
Expect to break it
duplication?
all the time.
And we have to have dual services because you can't meet all the needs of all the people with one
Right.
way to do it.
So some towns, I mean, there's always the accessibility option, right? There always has to be accessible ways to do all of these things, right? To meet all individuals' needs. I can't say whether or not having a paper copy versus an electronic copy falls under that, but it's offered everywhere. You can walk into larger cities, fill out your permit on a kiosk, and there's paper to the left because you have to kind of provide that option. I don't know if you're ever going to be a completely online situation with those. Maybe it'd be nice to, but
Eventually, maybe.
if you force someone to use a kiosk in a building, you also have to provide someone that could help them use that
Yes,
kiosk in the building.
It's like the
State agencies that
self-checkout
go
line at the
all
grocery store.
electronic,
Because
but
it
they-
doesn't work.
Like, oh, let me have
Yes.
Right. So at that point,
Good point.
is it easier just to have the paper? Because you're gonna have to have a person there anyways, right?
The cost-benefit analysis has to be looked at really closely. If you have thousands of people going through, it makes sense to have a few.
Yes.
But if
That's
it's
a lot
only
of
like
permits.
12 per week, having a full-time person and helping them through it, that's crazy.
Right. So I know the building inspector does have permits once they're filled out. Everything's online. It's available on a tablet he has. So he does mobile inspections. You have like just-in-time inspection notification. Maybe this online permitting project, PVPC, maybe it's related to what they had done and versus what, they're looking at doing. I don't know the extent of that, if it's into, the building department. Like, if what they're going to present includes the person who wants to put up a shed. I don't know if that's included in their permitting.
I think that's the assumption that it would be.
It will be.
I'm only saying what is
Right now, you can build something 8 by 8.
Oh, well, I couldn't tell you.
Well,
exactly.
a
I'm
large
talking about
shed.
the permit.
We'll say a barn. How about that?
Yeah, sorry.
But, I'd be curious how that all ties in together with that. Provide information on local permitting process on the town website and at town hall, such as flow charts or a permitting guidebook. So I have this as incorporate with above goal,
Yes.
and we sort of hit some of these. So the building inspector does have, we'll call it the permitting guidebook. His permit guides you through the process, right? He doesn't have a book that tells you to look at page 1 of the book to look at page 1 of the permit. The permit itself is kind of the guidebook. I don't,
Which actually makes more sense.
right, I don't know if having an actual book telling you how to fill out the other pieces of paper for the guy who wants to build or the person who wants to build a barn.
But the
right?
flowchart idea would tell you if you submitted it here, then it's got to go to here and here and here and here. I mean, that's the purpose of
Which was,
you
we'll
understanding
catch those.
where,
Right.
who's got to approve it and what kind of issues might arise from those different perspectives, right? So
Because
that
we
kind of-
talked about the gaps that
Right.
exist between the different commissions.
the
That
lack
may
of
be a
communication.
way of
So that
doing that.
So a
is
flowchart might not be a bad idea, but
pretty sure that is included in the permit packet. Who has to sign
There's a
off on those
checklist.
forms, right? So there might be, if you're doing a demolition, there's a list of 8 different signatures. If you're building something that requires other departments to sign off, there's areas for them to sign off, and it tells you that they have to sign off. And believe me, I like flow charts. I think they definitely, they show it better for visual learners, right? From one step to the other, so.
Well, I think it's, they're using it a different way too, because for me, a flow chart would be, if I was thinking about something that I wanted to do for a project, I would go and I'd sort of look and see, okay, what do I have to go through?
Right.
It's not the checklist at the very end to say, yeah, I did this and this. I mean, there's two different reasons,
Right.
for both things, I think, that's all. And this could be something posted on the wall in the town hall. I mean, it doesn't have
Right.
to be.
Well, that's a good point.
Anything.
The next one we had, create an online GIS-based parcel information system. We have that. So if you go to Mass GIS or Southampton GIS, you can see all the parcels with property owners' information. Massachusetts has their own for the entire state. Each town is broken out into smaller ones. So I don't know to what extent they were looking for parcel information here.
What is GIS? I'm like embarrassed.
Geographic Information System.
Oh, okay.
Well, perhaps this plan was written prior to those.
Yeah, it could have been. Just because I would put it as complete, because if I wanted to know anything about a property, I can go to Southampton GIS or
Yeah.
whatever the name is and find out what I need to know if I wanted to purchase it. Previous taxes, improvements, those types of things.
So that's my question to you. You saying Southampton has this or the state has it?
Both.
Oh,
Yep.
Yeah,
So
I
the
know-
state
I know
has
we
a
have it.
compiled GIS system of, I'm going to say every town. And
that's
then we
based
have
on
our own
towns
little,
feeding it? So is it redundant? Essentially, if you're looking at Southampton's, you're looking at the states. They're not.
depends what you're, yeah, so if you're just a resident who only cares about the property in the town you live in, then yeah, it is redundant. So, for instance, some of the work that we do, we look at property notifications across town borders. So having both is important, because you can highlight everything and, kind of show what property owners are where. Addresses if we have to notify
For the
them.
visual learner,
Oh, there you go.
Website would be-
Beauty Mapper, that's it.
What's the URL?
maps.state.ma.us.
So if you went to the state.gov, you
Yeah.
find
Maps.mass.
There's a search option, how you search GIS,
It's
and you.
Maps, and Mass GIS.
Look for Muni Mapper.
Yep.
So weird, but fits.
Mass GIS.
And-
I can send this to you.
And so the Southampton one is off our website?
Yeah, you can get to it from our website.
All I typed in was Southampton GIS.
Do we?
Does seem complete, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and I don't know if the chapter expected there to be more in the GIS system, like,
Or just be
so
bigger
cities,
undertaking.
right, so cities have their water, their sewer, their storm drain, they put everything on there. We don't have a lot
Since we
of
look at
those.
what we say, we don't have some of those things.
Yeah, exactly, so you have to map them.
But what's curious is this is marked down as a long-term strategy.
I know.
11 to
I
15
know.
years, and if it's already
That's
done.
already done.
Can you find,
Is that-
East
Unless they were
Hampton
thinking of something
Southampton
different, that's
apparently
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
has one that they recommend.
I wonder if we're talking about the same thing. Yeah.
Do we have a webmaster in Southampton?
A volunteer.
Is that
Art
art?
Lawrence.
Yeah.
He comes in, every day of the week that we're open. But, he's all we have.
Does he edit as well? I mean, is there's nobody,
He
I'm sure he
updates
does
everything.
the best job he can.
Yeah,
That's
but
for
he
sure.
updates all the information, yep. That's all. And if he retires a second time, we're gonna be in trouble.
That's East Hampton.
Okay, so East Hampton has different things on there. They have a more comprehensive mini map, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, so you can have different layers. Some towns put on like the year they pave a road. So it's a no cut, if you can't cut the road in 5 years, they kind of outline all of it. Depends to which extent you want to add information to it.
Land use and conservation information, so that would imply to me that it includes property card
We
information,
do
isn't
have
it?
conservation out here.
Yeah, but what about,
Open space, natural
Yeah, I
heritage.
mean, it just depends how many things you want to be able to look up.
Right.
You know, you could have a really in-depth system where, you know, half the things you could search for are actually really just obscure.
so what I'm
Information.
wondering is, they have identified a butter identification and permitting information. Is that all on that? Is that?
So butter information is, you can select the abutters. Same thing with like open space, natural heritage, water-related items, regulated areas. There's a lot of different layers on the website, so you can, you know, open space tagged properties, right? So similar to East Hampton, or we're still in Southampton, right? Yeah.
So when you say there's a lot, you're talking about Southampton or the States or both?
This was just Southampton's here, right? So it has open space broken down into federal, DCR, Division of Fish and Game, water protection, county, municipal, public, land trust, conservation, nonprofit, private. You know, so it does, there are a lot of different layers on here. It depends really what you're looking for.
I feel like maybe it was just an undertaking that they thought would take much
Is- oh,
longer.
so
I think
then
the
we are on
state
the
did it
property
for
then.
them, probably between now and then.
Individual.
Right.
I think it's a good, yes.
I mean, this is
The state did it for them. Would they do it for us?
Well, no, it is done for us.
As comprehensively as East Hampton and South Hadley and all the ones she's looking at?
Yeah, this was just different layers you can add.
Oh,
from the
so we
side.
have it. Okay, I
It's just
misunderstood, yeah.
different
I think he's saying like when they originally made this strategy as a long-term thing, we were probably looking at it as something we had to undertake.
I see, but the
Whereas
state
probably
state
did
has
it.
taken care
They
of
may
it.
have both underestimated the available technology, near future technology, and the fact that the state would just kick it in.
Okay, great. So that's a done.
Yeah.
Okay. Long-term goal done.
Don't see many of those.
One in 2000.
All right, library. Increase municipal appropriation for books and materials to the library, so the library can continue to meet state certification and aid in the absence of annual fundraising. That is complete?
Well, I happen to be a trustee right now, and I know that we are able to meet the financial obligation to keep our certification. However, that has not negated the need for fundraising. And fundraising isn't just to acquire books or materials such as CDs and those kind of materials, but the fundraising goes for other things. In fact, they just purchased an exterior book drop, which is considered a safety issue, because if someone prankster decided to put something in a book drop that was not meant to go into a building when nobody was in there or ever, it would be a safety issue. So now the book drops, you've been to places where the book drop is exterior, so that's a brand new thing, and the funding came in great part from the Friends, which is the fundraising arm of the library. And I need to plug something. Very big fundraiser coming up in early May, and it's a run that if you haven't heard about it, find out about it. Go to the library and ask. You have to sign up online, sorry, with Facebook or go to the library, but it is meant to, and it can also be a walk.
Just gonna ask.
Just the
if it's
5K.
It's the 5K or the 2K, correct. It's also going to be downtown. It's on Sunday, and it's not Mother's Day weekend. I think it's the weekend preceding Mother's Day. Plug. And definitely do it. We have a wonderful library, in my opinion.
We do.
A wonderful resource there.
Well, even though we have enough funding now to retain the certification, isn't D certification hasn't that been threatened numerous times in the
Well,
past?
you know,
Isn't that an
for
ongoing?
example, last year before the override, the budget process had a considerable cut for the library, which was going to actually put that in tremendous jeopardy, the certification.
And that's not the first time
And that's
either.
correct.
So,
Yeah.
what does that strategy even mean? Since
I think it's, I mean, having
Have more money.
decision-making bodies understand the consequences of
That's
not.
right. Right.
Because I think when people do, then they support it. And I know that the budget was submitted with sufficient money.
That's correct, and then it got cut because of the
No,
process.
but this year.
This year, good, yeah, I'm going to the
It's
finance meeting with the
standing way it
director.
is
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
and there's another point
but if more
too,
people understand that, then they wouldn't cut it.
and there's another point too. We are a small library because we are a small town, we're a good library, but, you know, if you wanted a book that wasn't in our collection,
Are you
you would go
sure?
through the CWMR system, and we need to be a member of that system, absolutely, because that way we can get the book that isn't in our library that you don't
And if
want to
you're
read.
not certified, you're not part
That
of
is
that
correct,
system.
yeah, it's all an interlinking thing. So far, it's been able to be maintained.
Okay. Crease.
But can
go
I
ahead.
just,
Yeah.
but as far as being an achieved goal, it's not. It's going to be an ongoing challenge, it sounds like to me.
That it would be better stated that, I don't know how we could require, I mean, could that be put before the select board? For example, you can never cut the police department by a certain level because you have to maintain certain guidelines, right? Or the fire department, or something where there's,
Trying to put the library into that.
and I don't know if the select board would ever say, we have to make sure we never cut the library, and I don't have the statistics, but I know Barbara could provide those, to say we will never be in jeopardy. You know, you couldn't cut that line item.
I don't know, I mean, so from a financial perspective, if you as a town have to balance your budget, and I'm not picking on the library, right? I'm not signaling anyone out, but if you had to balance a budget, and every department had to cut $40,000 or whatever percentage out that equated to the library losing its certification, it also equated to a police officer being laid off, 2 firefighters being laid off, you know, the 3 assistants in the building being let go,
Cutting teachers at school.
cutting teachers at schools. That is a reality of small town municipal budgeting, and I don't know. I mean, you could bring that up as a required. You can never do that, but I don't know if that's.
It'd be a tough sell.
I think it would be a tough sell because.
Of course it would be a touch.
You know, we even talk about it when we've done the budgeting for the last couple of years prior to me being in here. There were conversations about we have to reduce the budget. You have to, you know, consider laying off a police officer. You have to consider laying off a firefighter. You know, you have to consider losing this certification in some situations, right? So it is a conversation piece.
It's a little different though, because you're losing a person and you still have a functioning department, although on a on a more
Yeah.
bare bones level. Whereas if you lose certification of a library, it's very different.
You lose
It's to my way of thinking as you speak.
But what if I want the extra public safety as a taxpayer? Just devil's advocate, right? And I'm not trying to divide groups and users, but once you put those strings in there that you can never cut this budget below a certain
What if
level.
we put a word like maintain instead of require? Maintain.
Well, I guess my question is, why are we considering it?
Yeah.
So this is it's an operational question
Yeah.
about how they choose to do the budget, how they choose to budget going forward. The master plan, I mean, I guess we could ask that they consider it, right? But I don't know if it's our charge to make sure that bylaws and language is changed so that the library,
Yeah.
Is
And
never
like-
in
and like-
jeopardy.
And the next one, for instance, I mean,
that's similar thing. I mean, we're getting into personnel management of a department. This is a little too, it's too close to home with the department. It's not overarching, it's not
Right.
helping to provide, reading and recreational
Right.
resources to
Yeah.
children, right? I don't know, I feel like this one got like a little too personal with the
Got into the
library.
weeds a
You
little bit
mean
more.
the whole goal or just 66B?
66B,
I think the whole goal,
And D.
actually.
I think C fits in.
yeah, D, a little bit.
Yeah, C is,
I think B is really getting into the weeds. It isn't part of
Yeah.
our charge. That should be
Yeah.
up to the library committee itself
Yeah.
to figure out what their budget is and where their priorities are.
Because B is directly affected to A.
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to understand the logic of the strategy, or the
Right.
strategy, not even the logic of it. I'm trying to understand the strategy. How is that even done? Increase the municipal appropriation for books. What does that mean?
You lay someone off somewhere else, or you reduce a department somewhere else in the town. In terms of like where
That's a
finances.
goal, though? I mean, or it's a strategy toward a goal? I just don't
Yeah.
understand it as a meaningful strategy, I guess.
I mean, my version is it's the realist kind of pessimistic view of it, to increase with the town, with the budget the way it is today, to increase services somewhere else, you have to decrease somewhere, right? There has to be a cut.
Whether or not, speaking of the library or somewhere
Right.
else, I don't think you can have that as a strategy with the way our budget
Right.
is now.
I think it's difficult, maybe.
Whether it's the police department, the library, you can't say, oh, we'll
Well, I'm
increase
changing it.
appropriation.
I just sat in on a finance committee meeting, and they're talking about how they're going to be able to convince departments to take cuts.
But it's important
Convinced.
that people understand the implications of those cuts, and that's what
Right.
I'm saying, people
Yeah.
don't always
Don't always
understand. They don't understand what it means. It isn't just taking money, it means,
Yeah.
Well, and I'm hearing, I'm sorry.
No.
Chris.
So
Okay.
I'm hearing that there's a different approach. Am I wrong that when it comes to cutting the fire or cutting the police, that there's some kind of provision that says before you do this, you really need to consider the consequences? And other departments, there's not a provision. Am I wrong about that? Or-
No, it's a topic of discussion for any department, just from previous
So
experience.
there's not, before, I thought I heard, before, you can't cut the police, or before you cut the police, there's got to, it sounds like there's unequal footing, and that's the only thing I would want in consideration, because if there's a process before you make a cut to consider consequences and the degree of, impact it'll have on the town, I'm wondering if the people who make those decisions do not fully comprehend the impact of cutting library staff and what certification will mean. Do they not know that? Like, is there some process as well, when we cut police, this is what it means? But, well, we're just going to cut the library.
Well, I would say no, because every budget meeting I ever sat in with the select board, it's been explicitly explained. Barbara's done a great job, year over year, explaining exactly what happens if it drops below a certain level. So,
Including, all right, so someone from the library presents and represents what losing certification means. Because obviously with a newer building, not brand new, but a newer building, I mean, the town has an investment. And so does decertification negate that investment?
so that dollar figure is known, and it's known going into the budget process, exactly what the figure needs to be met for the certification.
So is within the library budget, then I'm assuming the certification cost is one line item in
Yes,
that budget, right?
it is.
Well,
So,
it's acquisition, it's maintaining the library books, the number of books, the collection.
Okay.
All of that falls under the certification process. It's not just sending in $120
Gotcha.
and holding certification.
Okay.
It's
Right.
it's
Yeah.
a whole process.
It's like
And
getting
Barbara
a
is,
certain amount
Yeah.
of materials.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
It's-
Some
and I was
items are
very clear
excluded,
with
but
that.
the majority are
Yes.
yeah,
included.
so you couldn't, in other words, you couldn't word it such as, okay, yes, we might have to take a cut at the library level, but you cannot touch line item A
Well-
for a certification.
well-
You might have to take it elsewhere, but this one is,
Well, it also has to do with
Yeah.
days of the week that's open.
Okay.
And so when the cuts get discussed. The question
Fewer
becomes,
services.
should the library be opened 6 days a week, which it is now, although it's not open full days, 6
Right.
days a week. But then that can affect certification.
Sure.
So it's not just
Yeah.
a one
Gotcha.
issue point to be made.
Yeah.
And as in terms of what Jim just said, and we're using library for an example, but it's always a process of saying, how important is it to have a good school? How important is it to have ambulance services or EMS services or those? I think the finance committee is.
If you
these two
look down
people
at the
were on
next
it for
section-
years. It's
It was
terrible.
never a good, it's not a good environment to sit in when you're having those conversations. I mean,
Well, and to that point then, now that you've educated me about that seeming, equity across, then why these three, 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, and not police and fire?
That's
That-
right.
That's what I
Say the
question.
next
Yeah.
I
one.
come back full circle and say, why are these in here and not other?
Well, the only thing I can say is, they talk about meaning 21st century standards.
Right.
So we're talking about having a good infrastructure for water, having a good infrastructure for sidewalks. We're talking about that as a master plan. Do we want our library to not just be a place to get books or a place to go and check your email, but more than that, do we want to meet 21st century standards? Do we want to constantly be looking at being a good library?
Well, I could play devil's advocate and say, look at our police department. It's in the basement of the Hilltop.
that's true.
So
Yeah,
why
it's
isn't
terrible.
that on here? So I'm still.
I think it's outside of their purview. I'll be honest. I think when the maybe not purview, but their expertise. So when this was put together, I don't necessarily think public safety, police department, and fire department, and EMS were under the auspice of the plan. Like, I don't think they were the right groups to recommend how to bring it forward and move it forward. If I had to guess, just from reading this, if you read the language, you read the groups of thought and where everything's going, the committees included, it doesn't strike me as a public safety.
You're right, there's a dearth of
I think
information.
those are more
back here.
untouchable entities.
Untouchable, but
They do their own
also
thing.
professionals outside of the people who created this report help to drive changes and create plans for other public safety facilities, right? I mean, I'm not gonna tell a guy how to build a boat because I don't know how to build a boat. And I think that's kind of,
I think that's logical, based on what I read, and I agree with you with the content, but I would say that, how can you have a master plan for a department when not considering fire, police,
highway.
that,
Well, they're also, two of the three are collective bargaining groups.
There's only one place you can cut that to a certain degree, and that's the schools. You've got laws that protect the funding for the schools.
And there's all these hundreds of unfunded mandates in the state. We know about that. Ridiculous. Yeah.
But the state basically tells us how much minimum the town can
That school
contribute.
spending is gonna be, if you don't
We don't make that
get state funds, then you're in worse shape. That's the only department they do that to.
Interestingly, in the summary, in Chapter 6, it says, build a public safety complex to modernize police and fire capabilities. So that's in the summary, but it's nowhere within Chapter
Here's the
6.
chapter talking about it. yes.
fairly broad, but,
But it's addressing those two departments, which are not addressed in the text of the
So
Chapter 6.
the one thing I noticed with that, right, so they talk about building a facility. So they tell you to build a building. Public services, so council on aging, public library, public elementary, they talk about staffing,
Yeah.
materials. They get into the management of the departments.
More operational than.
Right, than you would expect. And I honestly, I feel like, and I wasn't there, but, the developers of the plan, the guidance that was given, I think it just leaned stronger on these areas because there's probably more expertise.
clear reading the whole document.
Right.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with what you said earlier. I think it just got too specific.
A little too personal, I think. When you look at it from a higher view, you want to support the library, you want to help bring it to 21st century standards. Is the master plan really where you talk about hiring one more full-time staff member?
No.
It should just, it should be much more broad, so, support the library
Right.
and its efforts to
Yeah.
continue into the 21st century.
It, 10 years ago, financially, it probably wasn't much different than it is today.
What, the library?
Well, I want to say 10 years ago, that's when they went through the, didn't they go through the issue with the school? About 10 years ago?
I wasn't
Which
here
issue
then.
with the schools? Have been going through issues with the schools since I've been in this town.
Well, they went through, maybe it was less than that, but the schools took cuts, the other municipal departments didn't. I can't remember what year that was, where they had made major staffing cuts, well, not major, but the school had made staffing cuts, but the town departments did not.
A couple of years ago, I think.
It was farther than that, though. It was just prior to me being on the finance committee.
I don't remember.
But I don't know. Anyways.
But they should.
15 years ago, I was on the select board, and we had the same fights going, on, all the departments fighting for the money, and the school didn't have to fight as hard as anybody else because the law protected them. And we always were just below net school spending, because if we went a little further, we would lose our funding, so they always tried to stay real close to net school spending. And if you didn't, you would lose all the state monies for the schools. So the other departments, you had to spread out from them, And the schools, I negotiated with the schools when the increase was 3.5%, and they had in their contract it was 3.5%. And the school committee voted to give them 3.5%, but when we sat down and negotiated, they agreed, like the highway department and the police department, to take 2.5% instead. And they could have had the 3%, 3.5%. The very next select board, I went to a meeting and I said, look, these people worked with us, and while I was on the board, we collected over $600,000, and because myself and one person from the finance committee at Batchelder made sure the taxes got collected that weren't collected since 1970. There was over $600,000 in taxes and penalties that we got a lot of it in right away and started getting in. We had a fight on the select board to do that, because they didn't want to put old ladies out in the street. We're not putting old ladies out in the street. So if we get some old lady who's going to be put out in the street, we can go run a fundraiser for if we have to, but we've got to collect these taxes. But we got that money. When it came in, I went to a select board meeting and I said, look, we promised the departments that we do better for them when we got some money. Now we've got a windfall here. They said it's got to go in reserve. I said it doesn't have to all go in reserve. We've got to take care of our own people a little bit. And I said, we promised them. They said, that wasn't us that promised them. We never gave it to them. And it hasn't been the same between the departments and their bargaining units since, You gotta take care of the people that you've got, but you've also got to get the money to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's where the select board doesn't really do the job sometimes, but now we finding ways to get it done.
Yep.
The finance committee should tell them how much money they've got. The select board should tell them, should know what they need, and try to figure out how to get it, but it's not easy.
Nope.
Everybody's trying to do everybody else's job all the time and get their piece.
Yep.
So
What do we want to do with the library?
I'm looking at all three
This
sections and
section,
saying,
or these three sections?
yes,
6, 7, 8.
6, 7, 8.
Council on Aging and
I don't think we should spend a lot of time on it.
No.
That's
Yeah,
what
I
I
don't
don't
either.
think. I mean, we've already agreed that maybe a little too much focus was on it.
Right.
You used the word personal at the time of the creation. Maybe the same applies to 6, 7.
I think
And it
could
was just
almost-
addressing the problems that they were facing
Yeah.
and continue to face. I'm not saying that, but it wasn't like a
Right.
big picture, like
Yeah.
maintain a technology infrastructure for the school.
Correct.
I mean, something that's,
I think the main goals are good.
gets there.
So like goal 6-6, not the strategies,
Yeah.
but the actual
The
goals
goals are
themselves.
good. Yeah, I
Yes.
like that. Yeah.
Yes.
The goal language is good, and how do we, maybe we put that forward as a question action item to the select board. How do you want to pursue this? Or are you just happy being made aware of this being priority?
And this, yeah.
How do you put those in the forefront?
And in a way, the hired staff the 166, which is the library. If you have a good director, that individual should be able to constantly be looking for ways to keep it at the standards that will be, you know, meet the criteria for whatever. Same applies, I think, to Council on Aging. That's a very vague goal.
Yeah.
Increase public services available through Council on Aging to meet future increase in elder populations. I don't know, is there some kind of formula? If you have X number of people over the age of 65 in a town, what is the number of staff you should have? I mean, we're short on a few things for the Council on Aging, aren't we, in terms of lunches and a few things?
Well, the staff is determined by the budget, and the town, I mean,
It's not
something...
determined by the population.
Right, so no, there is no,
There's no
that I know,
formula.
there's no regulation, but there certainly might be. Maybe for some specific services that they offer, there may be a ratio, but I think just as a general existence.
Tell me, Francine, aren't we in, isn't our Council of Aging on a bit of like jeopardy for the things we aren't doing? I thought that, I heard that once.
Well, there are lots of unmet needs, I guess is the
Yes.
best way I could put it. Not much outreach. I don't think a lot is known about what's happening to older people who don't show up at the Council on Aging. What their situation is, what services they might need. I think that it's for lack of staff. For instance, the director, I don't want to get too specific, the director leaves her job here when someone has a medical appointment and the van is already occupied and can't take them. So she gets
leaves her
in her
job to
car, drives that person to whatever hospital they have to go to, waits for them, and brings them back. That's time away from here. That's how short-staffed they are. That's how limited the resources are. We talk about, per student contribution is like whatever it is in town here, $12,000 the elementary, $17,000 for the high school. I don't think it's $15 a senior citizen in this town, based on the budget. So, I mean, proportionately, but that's an operational issue. But I do think, stating it that we need to look at creating services and facilities that meet the needs of the people. That would be my goal, the population.
Well, especially with the demographics that's changing.
And
as we
leave all of this,
read
yeah,
earlier.
because since this was written, the demographics have changed.
I'm good with that.
Well, everybody has to convince the Board of Selectmen that this is necessary. That's where the argument is. It's not here, it's with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee.
Correct. So, Chapter 6, I did take a lot of notes. I have a lot of things to follow up with in terms of requesting information. A lot from the Water Department, Building Department, permitting.
I just had one quickie on the bottom of 134, the funding on the school on William E. Norris. Priority facility repairs and a new roof. Did that
The
happen?
roof's done.
It's done.
Yep.
But it continues to have leaks.
Under 68B, the safe roads to school, that little sidewalk on
Yeah.
College Highway.
Yeah.
You can go around the corner
Right.
on One Meadow Road, that's the post office. I don't know if any of those kids are walking to school in that neighborhood or if they're still
There are,
taking the bus.
yeah, on a good day.
Yeah.
But if it's a day that it's not good, I think anybody can get a bus ride. Am I right about that in our school?
Right, that was one of the things I questioned that was listed earlier, that every student is offered a bus.
Yeah, we did hear that, right.
It's in here.
And I
I
can't tell
wonder
you
if that's
the
still true.
That's
number of
not
times I drive down College Highway and kids
No,
are
because
crossing,
they-
not on the crosswalks.
A couple
Right.
of years ago, they changed it, and
We should-
you have to walk within a certain
I think it's
distance.
most places that are within 2 miles, you don't get bus service.
Yeah, but I don't think that's true
Not here,
in
though.
I
Southampton
don't know
because
about
it's a
here.
lack of sidewalks or a lack of crossing guards. In other towns, you see both sidewalks and crossing guards. So, I have a friend who lives over on Rosalie, right, grammar school kid. They have to cross Pomeroy. And there's no crossing
Yeah.
guard there. And so you think about in this wintertime with the snowbanks and you got kids crossing there. They can walk to school if they want, but I know they provided a bus and it's
I thought there was
right
a
there.
walking requirement within a certain distance.
That was
Not
when
this
they
time.
had a budget issue.
No, there was a fee.
And then you had to pay a fee.
You had to pay a
They
fee.
waived the fee now. I mean,
They had-
well,
they
they
eliminated it.
imposed a fee, but now
They've eliminated.
because they're not in that same financial situation.
Right.
They were able to,
But it had nothing to do with distance.
No.
Everybody gets a bus, which is shocking, because I don't know, I got to assume that someone's looked at the cost between paying crossing guard versus running a bus to these close neighborhoods.
Don't assume.
All right, so we have
That's interesting.
gone through 6. I don't want to get into 7 tonight, or do we? I mean, it's 8:40 now. Yeah, I'd rather try to get in a couple more meetings, even if we had to go once a week to get through the next 2. I am slowly trying to provide some more updates on the tracking sheet versus what's here. So I will continue to do that.
So we've only got the 2 chapters left, right?
Yeah, 7 and 8. Land use.
I think for me, I haven't really looked at the tracking chart that, that Margaret put together, so somehow we might need a meeting to kind of focus on that, to project it somewhere so we can all look at it and not squint at it, but and not have to print it out in 50 pages somehow.
Yeah, we could try to.
I don't know.
The projector isn't very good downstairs. I mean, it's not bad, but you have to sit in the dark to look at things, so it makes note taking tough. But yeah, we can find something to go through this once we've kind of hit every chapter.
Right, exactly.
We'll get it out, distributed, take a look at, and go from there.
Please, no, you go ahead.
just to say that in Chapter 7, I did request some information, because the data that's in here is many years old. So, like the aggregate utility costs for the town, municipal buildings and things like that. I didn't get a response yet, but hopefully by the next meeting, so there'll be some backup. And then I looked up a couple statistics from the state about the cost of energy, whether it's gas, oil, electric, so on and so forth, just to try to get some figures, just to update what's cited in the text here.
Not to interject, just real quick, I found the energy profile through like 15 minutes of searching. It was very hard to find, and it's like a mile long, but it would probably update what we have, so.
Is that for the town?
No, it's just Massachusetts, but it's better than not
Out of
having
pure
anything.
curiosity, I had looked up because it had said somewhere in the chapter about how our county had received an F for air
Quality, yeah.
We have a D. We're 3rd worst county in the state.
We are.
For air quality?
Yes.
That's and for what cause though? I mean, what, did they say why?
I mean, honestly, the valley has historically had really bad air.
The air comes across from the Rust Belt, comes over the Berkshires, and somehow gets stuck in the Connecticut River Valley. The Worcester Hills keep it, I guess, from going any further. It makes it all that way only to stop.
With no industry.
That's right.
Yeah, third worst county in the state.
That's
And I
pretty
think
amazing.
it's his point, it's coming from the Midwest, it's not,
Yes,
it's not,
yes, it is.
Monsanto and Ludlow.
It's Rust Belt.
Yeah.
And it comes, like I said, it's someone like a good professor who explained the aqueduct. Another professor needs to come and explain to us why it doesn't keep going. It comes all this way to stop. I don't.
Well, doesn't it stop in the, get
It
stuck in the
does,
Pioneer
but there's
Valley?
plenty of hills and valleys, I would think, between here and Cleveland, yet
Yeah, why?
this is the one where it stops. So, for example, the Hudson River Valley.
Well, maybe it's,
Maybe it does,
There are
yeah,
days
maybe
for
it's bad there too.
seasons, yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot of dead lakes between there and here.
All through me.
yeah.
I just look, is there any, for lay people, besides kilowatt hours and thermal units, any other expressions that we could understand to quantify things so that
How many have
regular
light
people-
bulbs?
Yeah, light bulbs. It just, I could relate to the information better if I really.
But also, what year is this finalized?
This was printed 2015, right? But it's based on data from,
Yeah, well,
The
the,
data's over 10 years old.
yes, and it was, the committee was formed in 2013, I think.
But as far as electricity, you also got to think, the mass use of, new lighting, we're not using
Right.
old light bulbs anymore.
Did they even have
Select board-
CFLs then? Never
Did
mind.
the select board just approve
LED lights.
all the
Exactly.
lighting is going to be changed at Norris?
Probably,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What about this building? That would go-
I think it's been done.
Right, your electricity
To some
costs can be
extent.
drastically
Didn't we get a
less.
grant in our town to do energy conservation?
So the Green Communities Act helps with that.
Yeah.
This doesn't refer to us as a green community, but I thought we had become one.
We are
Is
now.
that-
Very
yeah, so-
recently.
Yeah, so this is.
It's not on the
all
maps,
in
we're
that,
not down there,
yes.
yeah.
Right.
As I was saying earlier, I think this chapter is really out of,
It is.
Yeah, and there,
Are we into 7? Is that?
a lot of
Green
what
communities,
they
yeah.
did or what they do in the green communities takes care of a lot of the things that's in this chapter. So you could theoretically sort of check off a lot and almost get rid of the chapter and sort of reference the Green Communities Act and the steps that the town's making, because it basically duplicates efforts, and we have moving down one path, and we have a whole nother chapter that,
So the one question I had, though, that this refers to an energy committee, does such exist? Did it exist?
It
So-
did exist.
So who's in charge of making sure that we're doing whatever we're doing with the Green Communities Act?
town administrator.
Yes.
That was who applied, yeah.
Okay. So what happened to the energy committee? Why did it die?
I think it was very short-lived, didn't
Lots
it?
of
Wasn't it
Didn't
just
say that.
before,
Lots
of energy.
about the time of the master plan committee, like 2012 or so? Yeah, it was short-lived.
Yes, I was surprised to read about it.
Next meeting, would we be able to meet April 1st?
Well, I was just looking. There's a school committee meeting, and that's the afternoon. Finance committee meeting at 5:30. Cemetery commission at 6. Conservation commission at 6.
Okay.
Shall we do
That's
7?
next Monday? 1 week?
Is that
Next
the
Monday,
first?
yeah.
The first?
April Fool's Day? No fool.
April Fool's Day?
Oh, people meeting on April Fool's Day.
terrible.
I'm okay.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
So 7.
7
Because
on the 1st?
I am going to go to the finance committee meeting at 5:30 for the library.
I'm just, what I don't
What about
know,
you?
let me check. Did you say Hampshire School Committee?
It just says regional. Is that the Hampshire?
That's regional.
That's
I
at 3
can't-
PM,
Oh, that's negotiated. Nothing for 7?
according to the town
I'm gonna
calendar.
look at the calendar.
Okay.
Because I may not be able to make it if I have to go to that
Okay.
on the 1st.
So I do have a report out April 16th to the select board. So I'm trying to get in the next 2 chapters in the next 2 weeks. And just to have an overview of what we see as being complete, what we see as being in progress, more statistical for them than everything. And then maybe some broader topics and broader subjects for them to think about. And then hopefully get a little more, I guess, a clear vision or some clear marching orders of if they see us moving in a certain direction. So,
Has everybody read 7?
And the other part of that meeting on the 16th, we're going to have the folks who came in and gave a presentation about fiber optics to meet with us and the select board, just to bring this group into the loop. Because again, looking ahead in the very distant, not so distant, but distant future, and say we need to set the town up to be part of the next generation.
I don't know, just for, reporting purposes in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. If you want to do chapter 8 for next week too, since
Yeah.
we kind of just
I mean,
covered chapter
I'm good
7.
with doubling up. 7 is going to be quick. There are things that are done. There are things that I know are part of the green communities that's kind of in progress. So,
So, Mike, when you go to the select board, one thing we might be thinking, I don't know how the rest of you think of this, but, I mean, I'm thinking you should present what we want them to approve as opposed to have them tell us, just for, it'll expedite the whole thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Give them the opportunity to discuss it, but say that we are proposing something. I just think we
Right.
should be thinking in that direction.
okay. And we can definitely, I can put that on the agenda as a conversation piece for next week.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was hoping to get in 2 meetings before the 16th, so we could, if we do well next week, that second meeting could be all sort of plan and strategy review and discussion, and we can try to have some bigger topics. If everyone's
So
okay
for
with
next week, we are also going to read Chapter 8.
that. Yes.
Okay.
So 4-1 at 7 o'clock, chapters 7 and 8.
I thought we got a little lost in the particulars about the strategies, trying this new method. I think we spent a lot of time stuck
I think we
in
did.
specifics.
Was
Yeah.
it the strategy of starting with the strategies, or was it the topic?
Could be the topic.
I thought it was the
I
topic.
have felt
I mean, we
all
can-
along as I've read the goals and strategies that the strategies are overextensive, and we considered each one. And I have thought that there have been similarities in the kinds of strategies that have been proposed all along.
And taking this approach, we noticed it more. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think our meeting got extended. I think that we got caught up in Chapter 6 tonight because of looking at each strategy. That's my personal feeling.
No, I agree. I think it did. It took, I think honestly, I think it took as long as it would have if we reviewed the chapter the other way as well. I think,
Yeah, that's
and maybe it's chapter related, maybe
It
it's.
might be, because this is.
I
this
think
is
it
like
is.
Second or third night.
Yeah, this is a long chapter. There's a lot of issues in this
It's a
one.
long and it's a lot of,
Because we're
You know-
a thinking group. And
and there's things that people are passionate about and things that people,
yeah.
support, and I think the chapter is a little more difficult, We basically just said that chapter 7, we barely have to review.
I do think like going through the chapters, like reading it and just talking about it, we eventually get to the strategies and say, well, off the bat, we don't need this one, this one, this one. It's kind of just too much. Like
Right.
we can come up with our own ideas of what's relevant today.
Yeah, because we did either the reading or this, or now with this instance,
Yeah.
the chapter, not both together. And
But I feel like in past meetings, we've done more, certainly, we've read through the chapter and had our issues and questions about what's updated, what doesn't make any sense, et cetera, or what needs updating, but then we haven't really spent a long time on the strategies at the end of it. We kind of have glanced at it, but we really haven't paid that much attention. We really looked at the text and tried to see what's the relevancy or
Right.
the inconsistency that exists or the outdatedness that exists or whatever.
I mean, I think what we're finding is that,
Yeah.
like you said, a lot of it ends up being outdated. So
Yeah.
when we get to the strategies, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
we're all coming at it from
Yeah.
a much more relative lens. Like, well, this is really not important
Yeah.
these days, or this is really important.
And that's why I think whenever we get back to a meeting, maybe just on the plan itself, whatever you call it, the strategies themselves, the flow chart, not the flow chart, the spreadsheet, that may help us just wipe off a few of those and just say, this is useless, this,
Do you want to
no
set-
longer relevant.
Do you want to set the next meeting? Because
We
if
can
we're
do
going to
that.
bang it out, do you want to do it the following Monday, the 8th? Or the 15th? Although that would mean it's the night before the select board meeting.
Yeah, I'd prefer to do the 8th.
Should we put it on the calendar at least?
I'm good with that. And I think the marching
We'll
orders
schedule it.
for the 8th would be,
And the first?
And
first
the
day of
first.
the 8th.
And then if we can, support Mike at the select board
But
meeting.
don't,
on the
I'm
16th.
asking everyone to come twice in the next 2 weeks, so don't worry about the 16th. If you're
And then you have
If
the
you're
10th.
stretched
that's
thin,
optional.
don't worry.
But we were saying we were going to post it, well, it doesn't have to be a joint meeting. It can just be
What?
the 16th.
Yeah,
Oh,
it doesn't have to be a joint meeting. I'm happy we can post it as a joint meeting, but if your schedule does not allow, or if you need the time, I completely understand.
whatever you think. We don't want
Because
to
a
have,
joint
can't
meeting,
usually
you
do
would need to
Tuesdays.
have one,
Yeah.
quorum.
we have to have a
Can't make that.
quorum.
Yeah.
It's easy enough for me to post a meeting and then just cancel the
I
meeting.
thought the
No one
joint
shows up.
meeting is if there's going to be a debate and we're going to, it's not just being present, but I guess I
No,
don't
no,
understand.
it's really
I
to
understand what-
hear from, hopefully it would enlighten us a little bit more in our thinking in terms of what it is that we would propose.
Yeah.
Um,
So should we put up for first 1st and the 8th,
Who
7
can't make the
p.m.
8th? Oh, I guess, right.
No, I can't make the 16th.
Oh.
Yeah, the 16th.
There's a zoning board meeting on the 8th, I don't know.
The what kind of board?
Zoning board.
It's okay.
I think there's been other times when we've been back to back with the zoning, but we're in this room, right?
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
I mean,
First,
I do
and the
think
8th.
chapter 8 is going to take a little while. Land use. I'm
Yes.
sure we'll get into some discussion.
Although it might be land use, a lot of repeat of things we've done over.
Right.
We're lucky.
We've already brought
It's
up,
gonna-
yeah.
All right.
Can I move to adjourn?
A motion, there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
We'll adjourn at 8:54.